Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's LA Made program. My name is Diana Levo-Posner, and I am the Principal Librarian, Associate Director for the Exploration and Creativity Department of the Los Angeles Public Library. And I'm here to welcome you to today's LA Made program, a tour of the exhibit Life on a String. First, we'd like to thank the National Endowment to the Humanities, our Library Foundation, and our behind-the-scenes staff who help bring these LA Made programs to you virtually. LA Made focuses on the diverse landscape of Los Angeles, highlighting the immense artistic and performance talent that has developed in the course of the city's eclectic history. If you would like to see more of our amazing programs, please visit our online calendar at lapl.org/events, which is on the screen now, and we'll put in the chats later. And if you'd like to check out our LA Made programs, you can visit lapl.org/LAMADE. Our website also has blog posts, video links, and all other kinds of fun things that highlight the library's diverse resources and upcoming programs. But now onto today's program, Life on a String. You're going to be enjoying a guided overview of the library's latest exhibit, Life on a String, the Yale Puppeteers and the Turnabout Theater. Christina Rice, Senior Librarian of the library's photo collection and curator of the exhibit, will provide background on the exhibition and collection and discuss how 3 puppeteers from Michigan and Connecticut started a theater using discarded streetcar seats, how they helped spark the career of an African-American folk singer, and performed alongside the Bride of Frankenstein. Christina will be joined by Kevin Awakuni, a librarian in the Exploration and Creativity Department. We have to also give a shout out to our own library public relations social media expert, Keith Kessler, who is recording the tour. Take it away, Christina, Kevin, and Keith.
Hi there. So there is, according to city policy, a mask mandate, but during this 1-hour tour, we will be taking them off for the sake of clear communication and because the gallery is closed to the public. But normally, masks on when you're in the exhibit. So we're just going to take them off so you can hear us clearly. So hi, I'm Kevin Awakuni.
I'm Christina Rice.
And welcome to the virtual tour.
Woo!
Yay! I'm going to go ahead and let Christina take it away since you...
It's my show.
Yeah.
It's my show.
Yeah.
So yes, I'm Christina Rice. I am the Senior Librarian of the Los Angeles Public Library's photo collection. So for those of you that are not aware, the library has a collection of over 3 million photos chronicling life in Los Angeles from the 1850s to the present. You can go to tessa.lapl.org and view, I think we have 136,000 images and counting. If there's something you're looking for, you can always shoot us an email and we'll gladly check the archive for you. I also am very fortunate, in addition to the photos, to be custodian. My department is the custodian of the Yale Puppeteers / Turnabout Theater collection, which is the focus of our exhibit. This is something that I've been trying to get off the ground for a number of years, so I'm so excited that it's finally here. It was supposed to have opened in April of 2020, which didn't happen, but it's mounted now. We weren't able to open with as much fanfare as we would have done 19 months ago, but I'm excited to take you on a tour. I'm hoping people who are in Los Angeles can come down to Central Library to the Getty Gallery and view it for themselves. And for those of you who can't, I'm glad we're able to present a little bit of it here for you today.
Yay! All right, where should we begin?
Let's begin at the beginning.
All right.
So we're going to walk over this way.
Okay.
So most importantly, as I said, the archive chronicles the story of the Yale Puppeteers, and so that's who we really want to celebrate. So for many years, this collection was just known as the collection that had puppets because they were puppeteers. Okay. Yes, we do have puppets. We'll be looking at some, but most importantly are these 3 gentlemen. So we have Harry Burnett. He was the puppet maker and the primary puppeteer. Foreman Brown was the songwriter and just a very prolific writer. all around the board. And then this was Roddy Brandon, and he was like the manager / impresario. And so together, the three of them were the Yale Puppeteers, and they met in the 1920s and were just a very cohesive group that performed up until Foreman passed away in the mid-1990s.
Oh.
It was at that time when Foreman passed away that Michael Bridges, who was the executor of the estate, decided to gift this collection to the Los Angeles Public Library. So we've had it for a number of years. It was one of the first collections we digitized. So for those of you that are old school LAPL fans, you probably remember our really weird online exhibit. They're now in Content DM in Tessa, so you can see the digitized collection.
Okay.
This is the first time we're actually exhibiting them. So what this exhibit is it's chronicling, the lives and careers of these three incredible men.
Okay.
So
what year was this photo taken?
this photo was taken probably in the 1940s. So
Okay.
what they're really well known for is their Turnabout Theater, which
Okay.
we're certainly going to talk about.
Okay.
It was over on La Cienega, and it ran from 1941 to 1956. So this was during the
Whoa.
time of the Turnabout Theater.
Quite a long time.
It was for Los Angeles.
Yeah, 15 years. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, well, come on into the
Okay,
exhibit.
yeah.
So before we really get into the story, I feel like we need to stop at the puppets because the puppets are so much fun.
Okay.
So right up here, we have a puppet named Mr. Weather. And this puppet is actually from the 1970s, but he is a reproduction of a puppet that they had in the 1920s. So this was like early on in their career. He would have been a character. He's a little bit sad.
See
but-
with the down mouth.
He is, yeah. So, but because he's from the 1970s, he's actually one of the puppets we have that are in better condition.
Okay.
So, puppet number 1 for you.
All right.
Get a little detail on him.
Nice jacket.
It is a nice jacket.
Did the puppeteers make the clothing of the puppets?
The puppeteers themselves did not make the clothing. Harry Burnett's sister, she actually made a lot of clothing. But yeah, I mean, we know them as the three, but they had a lot of support.
I
They
see.
had a lot of help. One of the things to point out is that he has an articulated mouth. And Charles Taylor, who was a gentleman who really helped with information, he knew the Yale Puppeteers and worked with them for many years. He told me Harry Burnett couldn't do moving mouths. So whenever you see a moving mouth, that means somebody helped Harry with the puppet.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the other things that I did point out when we first started is we actually have an audio tour
Mm-hmm.
to go along. So as you're going through the exhibit, if you're able to come in person, you'll see QR codes.
Okay.
And now it's real easy to just hover your camera phone over them.
Gotcha.
Our audio tour has some archival audio, but it also has interviews with myself, with Charles Taylor, who I just mentioned, an introduction by our city librarian, John Zabo,
Okay.
and then James Reynolds, Abe Carver of TV's Days of Our Lives,
Oh.
actually came in and is our narrator.
Oh,
And we
fantastic.
recorded all of those interviews in our Octavia lab.
Oh,
So,
Wow.
yes, and they were edited there.
super cool.
Yeah. So we're going to come over, and the exhibit is fairly chronological. And so in this case, one of the pieces that I really love is this Foreman Brown's University of Michigan diploma from June of 1922. So it's a diploma that's almost 100 years old.
Wow.
So it's on, it's on like vellum or something. So it's in really good condition.
Yeah.
And you might be wondering, well, aren't they the Yale Puppeteers? They're not the University of Michigan Puppeteers.
Right.
That's correct. Foreman never actually went to Yale. So
Ah.
Foreman and Harry were distant cousins, and they got to know each other. They were reacquainted at the University of Michigan.
Okay.
Harry then enrolled in the theater arts program at Yale, and that was where they met Roddy, the third guy.
Gotcha.
And we do have a wonderful letter here from Yale, from one of the administrators at Yale, telling Harry he needs to stop messing around with these puppets. So Harry became enamored with puppetry at a very young age, and
Ah.
he traveled to Europe to kind of to study puppetry there. And so Harry always had this aspiration to perform like puppet shows that were a little bit more sophisticated and geared towards adults. So yes, puppet shows are for children, and we do puppet shows, so hopefully we'll be doing them soon here. But in addition to children's entertainment, he thought it could be like viable, kind of sophisticated entertainment for adults. And Foreman and Roddy bought into that. And so that was what they really aspired to and what they would ultimately achieve.
Right.
So early on, we have photos of them on the road. So they were going on the road like in New England and on the East Coast. And eventually they came to Hollywood, of course. And so if we come over here to this area, their very first puppet theater was in their house in the Hollywood Hills. So they weren't technically supposed to be running a club or a theater. So they called it a club, that it was a membership club. So people could just come gather at the membership club. And immediately they attracted kind of like the Hollywood set. Colleen Moore, the actress, was a huge fan of theirs. And they made a lot of celebrity puppets, which we can see here. And we'll see more of that a little bit later on in the exhibition. The current owners of this house recently emailed me. They were doing some renovations in the basement area where the puppet performances would have taken place. They took down some drywall, and there was like a hand-painted no smoking sign from the days when the Yale Puppeteers operated it.
And I'm sorry, where is the house located?
It's up in the Hollywood Hills.
I see.
I don't know if we have the exact address, but yeah, if you look online, you can see the exact address, and it's still standing there and looks very much the same.
And this was typical of their costumes at the time?
Yeah, I think they kind of jokingly later on referred to kind of these satin shirts as their Hollywood look. So no, this was actually not their usual.
Yeah.
It was not the usual, but they thought they needed to go Hollywood.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So they weren't in that theater or in their club for a really long period of time. Shortly thereafter was when Olvera Street was kind of transformed into a tourist area by Christine Sterling. And she actually invited them to open up a theater on Olvera Street. So they were the first, once Olvera Street was kind of overhauled, they were the first inhabitants of Olvera Street. And so you can see their theater right here. And this is where they started this long-standing tradition of anytime, again, so celebrities really gravitated to them early on. And so anytime celebrities came to their theater, they would have them sign the wall. And so that's when they started their autograph wall. And these were like removable panels that would kind of follow them from theater to theater. And then just briefly, I love this. This is the Shoe Shiners on Olvera Street. And so they hung out, they would go to the theater, and there was an anecdote that Foreman told that they all would pull their money together and give, one kid would take the money and go to like the $1 Million Theater and watch a movie. And it was the kid who was the best storyteller. And so he would come back and tell all the other kids what the story was.
That's fun. And then who took all these photographs? Were they various people and they kept them in their archives, or?
So yeah, I mean, it was various people. Like some of these would have hired professional photographers to document them. I do get the impression that Roddy Brandon took a lot of them because he's not in a lot of the photos, a lot of the group shots. Roddy's not there. So they did love to photograph. They documented their careers and their personal lives. And so we do have a lot of scrapbooks filled with snapshots in addition to the more kind of professional studio photos.
The stage photos per se.
Yeah, exactly. And so almost all of the photos as they're displayed are reproductions, or they're digital reproductions, because we wanted to blow them up. So this would be a little small snapshot.
I see.
But we do have a lot of the original materials in the cases, including, I love the rats. We have the rat ballet. We have the prima donna and her backup dancers, and this would have been from a production called The Pie-Eyed Piper. And I mounted these myself, so I'm very proud that I was able to get the rats up without messing up their strings too bad.
Is this the original strings too, perhaps?
I think they are. Yeah. And and Harry, again, was the puppet maker, and it's interesting because if you look at their tails are shoestrings. So I think Harry would just kind of cobble together whatever he had around and used paper mache. So a lot of our labels say mixed media because Harry used so many different types of things.
were the puppets pretty fragile when they?
Yeah, so these ones in particular, because these probably date from the 1930s.
Sure.
So in preparation for this exhibit, because we knew we were going to be displaying them for a while, we did have an object conservator as well as a textile conservator come in and stabilize. So, you know, and I'm not seeing things flaking off. So they did a really good job. And we told them we're going to have these on display for, you know, quite a few months. So we did do all of that prep work before they were put on display.
Look fantastic.
They do look fantastic.
Even their little bracelets. A lot of details.
Just so intricate. Yes. So it's just wonderful for people. You know, we've had these for so long, for people to actually see them looking so good. Is really cool. Okay. Keep moving.
Sure.
Okay. So they did stand on Vera Street for a couple of years and then kind of started yearning for home. So they tried to open a theater in Hampshire, a little bit off the beaten path, so that didn't go quite as well. And then they ended up going into New York, and they had a couple of theaters in New York, and actually they played on Broadway. So we have a blow-up of a playbill. And just in this case, we have some of Foreman's work. As I said, Foreman was a very prolific writer. So early on in 1936, he actually wrote a book kind of documenting their careers as puppeteers. And then they also published some of their shows. So if you kind of want to get an idea of the kind of the flavor of their shows, you can check out, we have this book. I think you have to come in and look at it. But yeah, so that's there. So a lot of the Yale Puppeteers, they left a lot of themselves behind. So if people want to explore what they did further, it is there for them.
Yeah, it's a pretty extensive history. I mean, even from the small walk that we've had, a lot of...
So, I mean, and again, we have I think we have like around 250 objects in this exhibit, and that's really just the tip of the iceberg. There's just so much. They frequently had like a newsletter they would publish. So, you know, we have the examples of the newsletter and just some of the advertisements for their shows. So we have so much. And we have more puppets because people love the puppets. So this is a fairly significant puppet for them. So this is Simon Legree, who was a character in Uncle Tom's Cabin. So they had kind of a jazzy takeoff called Uncle Tom's Heaven. They sold a lot of their puppets over the years, so they would kind of finance trips, and so they didn't keep a lot of their puppets. What we do have is in the exhibition. This was one Harry kept, and he kind of considered it his alter ego, which I don't know what that says about him. But he would often like bring it out and articulate it for people. And this one was really fragile, and his vest absolutely fell apart, and so the conservators actually did make a new vest for him.
It's funny how they aged it.
Fantastic. Yeah, they aged it. So you wouldn't know, but I feel like I need to point out that that is a new vest, but otherwise they just kind of stabilized him, and there he is.
Who bought the puppets? Were various people, like when
I think they're friends. I think when kind of word got around that they were selling their puppets, and I think that would just happen.
Wow.
So, and I did find out that, and they're in various like museums around the country and various collectors. And so the more, once the exhibition opened, I've received, people contact me, I have one of Harry's puppets, and I know where more of Harry's puppets are. So they're certainly out there. Absolutely. So then we're going to come to kind of the biggest part of the exhibit, and that's relating to the Turnabout Theater. And so that's what the Yale Puppeteers are most well known for. So I mentioned earlier, they operated the Turnabout Theater from 1941 to 1956. So, they had gone to New York and had done okay and were touring and decided like where they had really, I think, been most embraced was here in Los Angeles. So that's why they returned. And again, they had their theater and they had done kind of that more sophisticated entertainment. They're still doing a lot of shows because, where a puppeteer is going to get booked at schools a lot. But they really wanted to have their own theater, but expand it to not only have puppetry, but to also have like live review. So they wanted to kind of build on what they've been doing, and I think probably attract more people by having a live review. But it was very difficult to set up a puppet stage and break it down quickly in order to have a main stage. So what they decided they were going to do was to build a theater with a puppet show on a puppet stage on one side, and the full-size stage on the other. And they actually found somebody with a piece of land who was willing to let them build on it. They found a landlord who let them build. So they designed the building, which still stands. It's an antique store now. But they had designed it to accommodate the stages on either side. So the challenge was, how could people view a show on either side of the theater? And very fortuitously, the streetcars, our Pacific Electric streetcars at the time, were getting refurbished. And the cars had seats that were the back flipped back and forth, so nobody would have to ride the streetcar backwards. And so they were able to buy a bunch of those seats and install them, and that's how it became the Turnabout Theater.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, yeah, let's see a possible example of what it would look like.
So if you want to take a look at the wall here, so this big photo, this final photo on the wall, this is as if we are standing on the main stage looking towards the puppet stage. So that's how that worked. And it had one false balcony on the right and then a full balcony. Yeah. And all of the seats had names. And so they had kind of like dueling combo names, like, Mutt and Jeff and Black and Blue. And so we actually have here, in this case, they're rubber stamps. And so when people would come and buy their ticket, they would, stamp the ticket, and that's how they knew where they would be sitting in the theater. Okay. Which is really cool. And then we have some examples over here. So they also had seat covers. That's how people knew where their seat was.
Oh, I see.
So they had embroidered seat covers. These are not the seat covers from the Turnabout. So they performed, the three of them performed like at their home and would invite people over. So I suspect these were probably from their Turnabout house later on. But it gives you an idea of, how the seats worked.
Okay. Yeah. Really well done too, the display.
I can take no credit for that, but yeah, I agree. It is. I did not. I picked out all the stuff. I didn't design it. But it is.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Yeah. And this is a really fun piece. It's actually a model of the Turnabout Theater, and it was done by Charles Taylor, who I mentioned earlier, who was on our audio tour. And Charles was an architecture student, and he decided he was going to recreate the Turnabout Theater. So this was done like in the night. I think it was done like in the probably late 50s. And and you can see how there's the puppet stage on this side, and then a live stage on that side. Over here are actually some rooms, and that's where Harry and Roddy lived in the bedrooms there.
Oh, really? At the theater?
They lived at the theater, and then there was the courtyard. So at the intermission, when all the seats were being flipped, the guests would come hang out in this courtyard.
Oh, wow, so cool.
It is so cool, right? I feel ripped off that I never got to go there.
Well, maybe someday in the future.
Maybe someday.
I mean, or time travel in the past.
Maybe. I'd be willing to do that.
Yeah.
And we'll come here. So even though that they did emphasize, kind of like adult entertainment, they of course loved performing for children. And so they did have a circus show, Tommy Turnabout. Roddy was a huge fan of the circus. And so that was one of the driving reasons why they did their circus show. They did perform it at the Turnabout Theater. But if we look at this photo here, they also set up a big top in the parking lot of the farmer's market. And so that's where it was originated.
Oh, on Fairfax?
Yeah. They did it there.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's funny to think there would have been a circus there at one point.
There's a circus at the farmer's market, yes.
Wow.
Yeah. And so there's Harry, selling tickets, and his Bobalina, the clown costume. And then over here, we have, these are probably my two favorite pieces of the entire exhibit. And so these two pieces were made in the 1920s. So at one point, before they came to Los Angeles, they did a puppet show that was designed by Norman Bell Geddes. And so they made an entire orchestra. So there were like dozens of these puppets. And so there's a whole orchestra that opened the Norman Bell Geddes show. And some of these puppets were also used in a film called I Am Suzanne, which we didn't talk about, but we have some objects related to that film.
Oh, okay.
Afterwards, they kept three. So they kept the pianist, the cellist, and the violinist. And the trio, they called them the Haydn Trio because they played one of the composer Haydn's pieces.
Oh, okay.
They opened every single show of the Turnabout Theater.
Oh.
So anybody who ever went to the Turnabout Theater would have seen these puppets open the show. Sadly, the cellist was stolen from the Yale Puppeteers in the 1950s. So he is gone. I'm hoping he's out there somewhere and might be reunited with his brothers, but we have these two. And so I just think it's so special that these puppets that opened every show of the Turnabout, we now have in our possession and people can come see.
Yeah.
And we do have a wonderful photo blown up here.
Oh,
Where you can see all three of them, including our long lost cellist in the background.
Oh, yeah. They look very happy.
I think they were happy. They were living their best life.
Yeah.
For
sure.
If we come over this way, just to kind of wrap up Tommy's Turnabout, we have two costumes in the collection, which we have them both on display. So they're both clown costumes that would have been worn by Harry, including the jacket when he was Bobolina the clown, which we saw the photo earlier. And we don't have his pants, but we have his hat and shoes. And then we have another clown costume, which is fun because it has a built-in belly.
Oh, yeah.
And then we have this marionette here. So it's newer. I think it's from the 70s. And this marionette was donated to us last September, so September of 2020.
Oh.
So there was a puppet theater, I think it was in Denver. So it was a Denver puppet theater that closed, and they contacted me and said, we have this Harry Burnett puppet. Do you want it?
Wow.
I said, well, of course I want it.
Did they hear about the collection and contact?
We had launched an online version of the exhibit. So we were so disappointed that we weren't able to open the exhibit that we do have an online version. So you can go to, I think, exhibits.lapl.org.
Okay.
And you can view, I think it's a really cool, it's a Cliff's Note version of this exhibition. So yeah, they heard about it then, and he came to us, and at the last minute, we were able to include, it's a self-portrait, it's Harry's self-portrait of himself as a clown.
Yeah.
But we were able to include it in the exhibition.
Yeah, it looks like it's in really nice shape, too.
Oh, he's in great shape, yeah, because he's not as old. He's not as old as the
rats. Oh,
rats.
right, okay.
He's not as old as the rats.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. And then this is another really fun pair. And so this is our opera singer, her accompanist. And these ones are a little bit bigger than some of the other puppets that we've seen. And that's because these were made for road shows. So after they closed the Turnabout Theater in 1956, they had a couple of theaters in San Francisco, and then they did a lot of touring. And so these would have been made for touring. As you can see, she has a movable mouth, which means that Harry would not have made the mouth.
Oh.
But I'm pretty sure he probably did make her heaving bosom. So when she sings, she can give it her all.
Okay. Yeah, the piano player looks just like wide-eyed, surprised.
She hit that high note, you can tell. You can tell. So I think one of the big part of the story of the Yale Puppeteers and the Turnabout Theater, I think, kind of were the people around them. So, it wasn't just the three of them. There were a lot of people who really contributed to their success. And so over here in this area, we talk about some of those people. I think one of the most significant ones is Dorothy Newman. And so she was really the fourth Yale puppeteer during that time of the Turnabout Theater. So she was a performer. She was also a costumer. I think had a great head for business. And so she was invited by them almost from the beginning. But before the theater was built, we have a photo of her with them like visiting the vacant lot. And so she contributed a great deal to the success of the Turnabout Theater. I also want to point out over here is this gal. And she was kind of the caretaker of the theater. And so she would come and her name was Flora Sanders Felicius. And she would come and clean the theater. She would bring her 16-year-old daughter with her. And Harry loved opera. And so, while the theater was closed and they were prepping it for the next show, he would, turn on his phonograph and have opera playing. And Flora's 16-year-old daughter would get so caught up in the music that she'd stop cleaning and just start singing along. And Harry Burnett was so impressed with this teenager's voice that he started paying for her voice lessons.
Oh.
And we know her now as Odetta, the folk singer. So that is how she got her start.
Wow.
She did perform at the Turnabout Theater, so we have photos of her in Tommy Turnabout Circus. And she would go on to be like a famous folk singer and activist. She always credited Harry for giving her her career.
That's nice.
Which I think is really fantastic.
Yeah.
And I think one of the more well-known people associated with the theater is Elsa Lanchester.
Okay.
Who a lot of people these days know as the Bride of Frankenstein. So Elsa was going to do a 2-week residency with at the Turnabout Theater when it first opened. She stayed for 10 years.
Ooh.
So for 10 years, at some point during 1941 and 51, you could go, see this incredible puppet show, but also see Elsa Lanchester perform, which is so cool. So we have our little tribute to Elsa wall. And as I mentioned, Foreman Brown was an incredibly prolific writer of both prose and fiction and songs. And so he wrote many songs just for Elsa, and she performed those songs for years and years. And so we have 2 albums here that she recorded, which you can still go into vinyl stores and find.
Wow.
So Elsa's just very, and she, in her autobiography, which is fabulous, which you can check out from the library, she writes, about her time with them. And we have lots of photos. Like her and her husband Charles Lawton owned a cabin in Idlewild, and the trio and Dorothy Newman would go up. So they spent a lot of time together, and really just kind of were a family.
Oh,
which
that's
is why we
nice.
kind of refer to all of these people as the Turnabout family.
Oh yeah. What style of music was this?
It's kind of like just like body musical.
Okay.
So yeah, and in the exhibition, we do have playing on a loop over here. There's Elsa actually performing much later on, not at the Turnabout.
Right.
We do have a documentary playing on a loop that was made by Harry Burnett's nephew, Dan Bessie. So he allowed us to do it. And so he does include Elsa performing the songs much later on, so you can get an idea of kind of how Elsa put herself across.
Yeah, that's fun.
So in addition, to make sure we're good on time, so as I had mentioned, celebrities are a really big part of the story of the Yale Puppeteers. And, there, I think we're always really happy to kind of hobnob with the celebrities over the years. And, the Turnabout Theater was really kind of the hip place to be. So from the time they landed here in Los Angeles, celebrities were always a big thing.
Gotcha.
As I mentioned, Colleen Moore, she visited them at their first club in the Hollywood Hills and brought her friends. And then word got around. And so one of the things they loved to do in the 1920s and 30s in particular were to make celebrity puppets and then track down the celebrities and take a picture of them with their puppets. And so we do have, not all of the examples, but we do have some examples of the celebrities with their puppets.
Right.
So we have Gary Cooper.
Very debonair.
Oh, Gary Cooper. Oh, yeah. You're not kidding. And I recently found out that this puppet still exists and is at the Detroit Children's Museum. So I was very excited to find out it still exists.
Cool.
And here's Colleen Moore. We had to have her in there because she played such a role in their early success here in Los Angeles. And, just some of the people that visited. So we have Betty Davis.
Wow.
In just an incredible 1940s dress.
I know. I was just about to comment. Look at that.
I want that dress.
Look at that jacket. Or is that a mink stole?
Oh, it's mink. Yeah, because it gets so cold here in Los Angeles. And here, Jane Russell. Yes, I put her in here because I wrote a book on her, and I'm the queen. So, but Jane did a fundraiser for her Waif Foundation. And so she did it here at the Turnabout Theater. We have Ramon Navarro with his puppet. We have Marie Dressler. So she was another one who was kind of like advocated for them and brought people along.
Cool.
Keeping in character, Greta Garbo refused to be photographed with her puppet. So I think Garbo always kept it real. I think this is a fun one that this photo has kind of made the round. So it's Albert Einstein at Caltech. And when he saw his puppet, he took a letter he had and he crunched it up and whatever, like the German word, like, you need to make him bigger. So he stuffed it in the stomach. And then probably my favorite celebrity puppet, and I would love to find out what happened to the puppet, is Amy Semple McPherson.
Mhm.
So
Sister Amy.
Sister Amy. So they made that. They went and visited her. And I guess when they got to her, Harry started manipulating it, started manipulating the puppet to dance. And she said, oh, no, you mustn't do that. Sister Amy mustn't dance.
I love it. Third person, even the puppet can't dance.
The puppet, Sister Amy, just doesn't dance. No. And so at the Turnabout Theater, they really took the autograph wall and just really went to town. So before they would have these smaller panels at their theaters, and at the Turnabout, they just had a much larger version of this autograph wall. Oh. And so this is just one piece of it.
Yeah.
But
I see George Burns. I didn't notice that before.
Yeah, there's George Burns and Gracie Allen. Yeah. Jean Cagney, his sister.
I think I see Henry Fonda. Oh, and Fred McMurray.
There's Fred McMurray.
Wow.
Yeah, you can just stand here. The Lane sisters, all 4 of them are there. Hedy Lamarr is there.
Oh.
Yeah. Esther Williams, Greer Garson.
So it
Ethel Waters,
was really a
Lyle
place
Talbot.
to visit.
It was a place to visit, and fortunately, so you can just kind of see how how proud they were of their celebrity connection. We have a list of everybody who signed the wall.
Okay.
And then there are numbers after it, and the numbers kind of indicate what panel of the theater it was located. So originally we're like, guys, are these people? Did this all the times they visited? They really kept track of that? But no, this was whatever panel it was.
Okay. Oh, Ray Bradbury.
Ray Bradbury went to the Turnabout Theater. I think he lost count. He absolutely loved it. Wow. And in the 1980s, when Foreman Brown wrote kind of a chronicle about the Turnabout Theater, Ray Bradbury wrote the introduction.
That's so awesome.
It is. And then we have a reproduction of a letter that Eleanor Roosevelt, I don't know where the original, but they made a photographic reproduction of it.
Wow. Pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. And in addition to the autograph wall, they would also, they really enjoyed having celebrities just sign photographs.
Oh, okay.
And so this is really just a small sampling of the autograph photos. We have a lot more in the collection. I love the Anna May Wong one. It's just a gorgeous photo of her.
Yeah.
But her signature, I just think is so cool.
Yeah.
And we have Sid Grauman and Aileen McMahon, I personally love, so that's why she's there. Charles Lawton, who was Elsa Lanchester's husband.
Oh,
Marie Dressler, Leslie Howard. There's Colleen Moore. There's Dietrich.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah. So it's just really, I think for us, we have a lot of collections, but this is probably the most unique collection we have in the entire library.
Yeah.
So it just has such a wide variety of objects, and it's unlike anything else.
And subject matter just seems so broad.
Subject matter so broad. And so we have one last set of puppets. And so these are not marionettes. So these are, I don't know what they're called. They're like pole puppets. I don't know what they're called, but they're operated from below. So you would manipulate their mouth with a pole. Okay. And it's the Billy Goat Gruff. Later on, Harry would often teach, even start, way back in the 30s, Harry would teach puppet making workshops. Oh. And so this was something that he did, I think all the way, at least into the 1970s. And so that's when these date from.
Oh.
So, but again, probably had help with them, with the mouths.
Yeah. Wow.
Since they're not articulated. And then over here, one, a really significant part of the story of the Yale Puppeteers is that all 3 men were gay. Mm-hmm. Obviously, they couldn't be open about it.
Right.
And for most of their lives weren't not open about it. Foreman and Roddy, were in a dedicated relationship, almost from the time they met until Roddy passed away in 1985. As I'd mentioned many times, Foreman was just an incredible writer. And in the early 1930s, he wrote an autobiographical novel called Better Angel, which kind of talked about his coming of age and his relationships with the Yale Puppeteers. But he had to write it under a pseudonym because, one, his parents were still alive, and he did not want his parents to know he was gay.
Right.
He also feared, because he worked for CBS, he feared he might lose his job. Oh. So he did write it under the pseudonym Richard Meeker.
Gotcha.
And it came out in the early 30s. And within the circles that it did circulate in, it was very well received. Earlier in the exhibition, we do have some fan letters he received from men saying, I wish I had something like this, when I was younger, and it was so meaningful, and it was, well reviewed, and then just kind of disappeared, and it fell into the public domain.
Okay.
Bizarrely, in 1950, it was republished as a pulp novel called Torment,
and
which we have a copy of Torment here in the case. Which has, a woman kind of dressed like Rita Hayworth and Gilda reaching out to the tormented man in a corner, which does not reflect the book at all. The book is now considered, one of the first, I think, pieces of literature in America where a gay protagonist isn't forced to suffer or die at the end.
No trauma drama.
Able to kind of ride off into the sunset. So it was released as the pulp in 1950. In 1987, Allison Publications came across it and decided that it was good enough to put back in print. Okay. By that time, I had mentioned it fallen into the public domain. They tried to find Richard Meeker, could not find him, assumed he was dead, so they went ahead and published it. Okay. And so Foreman one day walks into a bookstore here in Los Angeles that was called, I think it was A Different Light. Okay. And because somebody had told him, hey, your book got published. And so he walked into the bookstore and said, do you have a book called Better Angel? And the clerk said, we do. I think you'll really enjoy it. And he said, well, I certainly hope so. I wrote it. And so he was put in contact with Allison Publications, and they did reissue it in the early 90s. And we have a copy here. Okay. Still credited to Richard Meeker. Okay. But Foreman's photo is on the cover. Right. And he does have like I think a foreword inside, and then there's Torment over there. Oh, right. And so the book came out, and it was incredibly well received, and Foreman was absolutely celebrated. He was able, at the age of 80-something, was able to finally come out. He was just embraced by the LGBT community. I think most important to him, he was able to kind of proclaim that Roddy Brandon had been the love of his life. Sadly, nice. Roddy didn't live to see that. We have some love letters between Foreman and Roddy, which are just lovely. And so, it really ends, Foreman, he did get to ride off into the sunset in a manner of speaking. Yeah. And he also went on to write this children's book that I'm borrowing from our children's department. Okay. It's a picture book about a kid with two dads, which is kind of cool because it came out in 1991. Oh, so very ahead of its time. It's very ahead of its time. As I mentioned, Foreman also published Small Wonder, which is it's Punch's Progress, which he had written in the 1930s, which we saw earlier, combined with him writing about the Turnabout Theater with that foreword by Ray Bradbury. Okay. And then in conjunction with this exhibition, we were really excited that that the Los Angeles Public Library, with Photo Friends, my support group, who are amazing, we put Better Angel back in print because it's in the public domain. So you can check it out. A number of our branches have it. There's a lot of copies on Overdrive. Our library store is selling copies of it, and it features an introduction by John Zabo, our city librarian. Okay. So we're really excited to kind of be able to get this in people's hands again. Yeah, and just get it out there. So I think at this point, it's not only considered a significant piece of LGBT literature, but just a significant piece of American literature in general. Oh, that's so great. Really happy about that. So go check that out. And then, so our exhibit kind of, and they all kind of stayed together, as this trio. They would often celebrate their 25th anniversary as the Yale Puppeteers and their 50th anniversary. And Odetta and Elsa Lanchester and Dorothy Nauma would always come get together with them. They had a house called the Turnabout House where they performed together. And so at the end, all three of them were living together. Roddy passed away in 1985, Harry, I think around 91 or 92, and then finally Foreman in 1995. Okay. Which brings us to how we got this collection. Okay. Wow. So we just have a few a few items here. I just want to show one of my favorite photos in the exhibition at the Turnabout House, and it's Foreman giving Roddy a haircut. And I think it's just such an incredibly sweet photo. Yeah. And so that's kind of how we close out our exhibition, along with Harry Burnett and all of all of his puppets.
Oh yeah, and then
Joyful, yes. So we do have, of course, we have merch, because why wouldn't we?
sure.
So we do have a number of pieces of merchandise we have, in addition to Better Angels, we have our catalog that was published by Photo Friends, and it's, I love it. It's full color.
Oh, beautiful.
And it has, all of the pieces in the exhibition.
Mm-hmm.
And it has some really great, I'm really proud of the photos of our puppets, which Keith Kessler, who's operating our camera right now, thank you, Keith, also took the photos of the objects.
Ah.
And I have to also give credit to Fernando Saucedo in the photo collection and Sai Gutierrez, who also helped photograph and Photoshop our puppet pictures. So we have that.
Great.
Photo Friends partnered with Dan Bessie, who I mentioned before, who's the documentarian and the nephew of Harry Burnett. So we have some of his reminiscences and some of his items in his collection, which there's a little bit of overlap. So we have our Turnabout scrapbook.
Cool.
In one of our cases, we have this little children's book, which is a little bit bigger, but it's Tommy Turnabout Jr.
Okay.
So that production did have a whole little storyline.
Oh, I see.
So we reprinted that.
Yeah.
And we have...
Is that the postcard?
We have a postcard. This is a collector's item because it has our phantom dates of April to September of 2020, because we ordered these ahead of time.
Collector's item.
So you want the collector's item of the exhibition dates that didn't happen. We have our enamel pins, which I'm super excited about.
Yeah.
So these are all like original designs
Okay.
that a gentleman named Noah McMillan with a firm called Weird Giants did. And then I was also really excited. We have our lovely silk scarf.
You can't feel it, but it is very smooth.
It is luxurious.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't own much. I think this is the only silk I own would be this piece.
I own none.
So we have
one more than me.
Scarf. Yeah. And so these are all available at our library store.
That's right.
If you come to Central Library,
Yeah.
You can purchase these in the store, or you can go onto their website.
Order online.
They will ship them to you.
Yeah.
It's like fabulous holiday gifts.
Exactly. Coming up.
So I think that is, I could have given you like a 5-hour tour.
Sure.
But we limited it. I think we're okay. I think we're good on time.
Yeah.
So I think
We have time for questions, if
time for
any.
questions.
All right, let's see. All right. Okay. Oh, is there any film footage of the Puppeteers early on?
To the best of my knowledge, there is no film footage of like the Turnabout Theater. The footage that there is from a movie called I Am Suzanne. Oh. And so there is an extended sequence of their puppetry, which we actually have running on a loop in the exhibit. You might be able to go online and probably maybe find I Am Suzanne somewhere. But to my knowledge, like in the documentary, like all of the footage of them puppeteers is I Am Suzanne. So I think that's mainly what exists.
Okay.
But you never know. Somebody has something somewhere.
I guess because it's from an older period, so maybe footage like that might be harder to come by too.
It could be. Yeah. If it didn't exist, or, somebody would have had to have gone in. Yeah, so they seem to document their lives with photographs.
Right.
But it doesn't seem like they were documenting with like 8mm or 16mm. So I don't, other than I Am Suzanne, I'm not aware of other footage that exists.
Okay.
Yeah.
Putting the next one. All right. Do you know approximately how long these puppet shows lasted? You spoke about the spectators going out into the courtyard while the seats were turned. I imagine this was a sort of intermission?
It was an intermission. I don't know what the runtime was, but the evening would start with the puppet show.
Okay.
So the Haydn Trio would start it off, and then they would do the puppet show. And then, yes, there would be the intermission where people would go into the courtyard and, have snacks or drinks while all of the seats were flipped.
Okay.
So then they would come back, and whoever was in the front row for the puppet show would be in the back row for the live review, and vice versa.
Yeah.
And so the live review would be the second half of the evening.
Yeah, I wonder how comfortable those seats would have been, since they were like They were
the train seats.
Yeah.
I don't know. You look like you were really scrunched in there. So, like in the era of COVID, you look at it and you're like, oh God, that looks, They were very cozy.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, next question. Where will all the exhibit materials be stored when it is taken down? Library storage?
Library storage. So they were all stored here. So they were all stored down on lower level 4 in the photo collection. and that's where they will end up once again. But they're going to end up in better shape because I'm going to have those, the conservators come back and pack them.
Yeah.
So admin, we're going to pay the conservators to come pack them up. So yeah, but that's where they'll be stored once it's all. So we do have the room for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
What will the next big exhibit at the library be? Any?
Our library foundation, they're going to install something in this space right after. So I think that this is coming down in March.
Okay.
So I think in May will be that, and I should know what it is related to, and I'm blanking out. But yeah, our library foundation does have something that, again, they were going to mount sometime last year.
Okay.
So yeah, so the gallery is not going to go dark for a long time once this comes down. They're going right into the next one.
Okay.
And we also currently, in the gallery right next door, we have an exhibition relating to Joe Mora, the map makers. We have these gorgeous pictorial maps from our collection, and we borrowed some. And then down on lower level 4, the history department, I have an exhibition space I oversee that's just the library's photos. Okay. And we have a new exhibition down there relating to the history's relationship with water. Okay. So it's it's like a little bit like wacky and fun, and then also super depressing.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah, so I recommend starting,
two ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, start on the east side of the gallery and then make your way.
Okay.
It gets better.
All right. Let's see. The film mentioned I Am Suzanne has a marionette circus scene. A brief sequence shows Harry Burnett with the puppet. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they do. Yeah, we do. They were in that, and there's another film, Whom Gods Destroy, I think is the name of it. Oh. And they actually, they do kind of show up in, they're not, they have speaking parts, but yeah, you can get a glimpse of them. And we do have stills that show them.
Yeah. Okay.
They were very active participants in that.
Let's see. What about this collection made you want to do the exhibit?
Well, it's just an incredible collection. But I think it actually did really bother me that everybody would say, oh, is that the collection with the puppets? Oh, that's the puppet one, right?
Dismissive, kind of?
Maybe in a way. People say that's the one with the creepy puppets, which I disagree with. Right. So I know one of my Girl Scouts was here, my Girl Scout troop, and apparently she left because she thought they were creepy, so I'm going to drag her back in. But I didn't like kind of that, oh, that's just the collection, the weird collection with the puppets. That it was actually just the story of these 3 guys and, the impact that they did have. And it's a wonderful Los Angeles story. Sure. And when I first, I interned in the photo collection in 2004. Okay. So that was my first exposure to the photo collection. And Carolyn Cole, who was my predecessor, she had a box of the VHS tapes of the documentary, and she gave me one and said, you need to watch this. And so I was introduced to them, to the 3 of them, before I was even working at the library. Okay. And so once I came back, a friend of mine, who's now on the Photo Friends board, Eric, said, it would make a great exhibit, that Turnabout. I said, God, you're right, it would. Yeah. So for the last probably 10 years or so, I thought, gosh, it would be a great exhibit. And here we are now. And it's a great exhibit. Yeah. Let's see.
I think that might... this looks frozen. I think that might be it.
Is that it?
Yeah. Yep, that's it. So any last words? Any last...
Yeah, just the exhibition is going to be open until March. Central Library is open full hours. We miss you all. Come back to us, please. If you can't, again, thank you for joining us tonight. And you can go online, and there's the online version of the exhibit, and you can get the merch, and you can relive this last hour with our catalog. And just support the Los Angeles Public Library and go to tessa.lapl.org and dive into the photo collection and the Turnabout Theater, Yale Puppeteers collection, and everything else we have to offer, because it's a lot.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll kick it back over to Diane. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was amazing, and I hope you all get to come down to Central sometime and get to see the exhibit firsthand. And remember, please make sure to bring your masks, and you will need to wear them when you enter the library and when you walk through the exhibit. So remember to check out the library's online calendar at lapl.org/events. When you go there, you're going to probably see that this coming Tuesday, November 2nd, we will be streaming on the library's YouTube and Facebook page, Dia de los Muertos family program starting at 6 p.m. It's going to be lots of fun, so I hope you'll come back and hang out with us. And don't forget to check out our next amazing LA Made program on Thursday, November 4th, where it'll be our pleasure to welcome legendary actor, restaurateur, and intervention counselor Danny Trejo. He'll be discussing his new memoir, Trejo, My Life of Crime, Redemption, and Hollywood, with co-author Donald Loge, followed by an audience Q&A. This is a free event, and those attending the virtual program will have a chance to win a copy of Danny's book. So until next time, we truly appreciate all your support. The success of LA Made and all our library programs could not happen without viewers like yourselves. See you next time. Adios.